So everybody, welcome to today's Melbourne Connect event, Advancing Invention to Investment. We're really pleased to have you all here. We've got three special guests joining us today for this conversation, which I'm really excited to dive into. So thank you for joining us. Before we begin, and for all those who are attending today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're presenting on today, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation on our end, as well as the traditional owners of the land you're situated on, and acknowledge that Indigenous Australians have been custodians of this land that we know as Australia for thousands of years. So we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And we welcome you here for this online lunchtime chat around investment and also the ways in which we, drive engagement. And we've got some different perspectives today, talking about a number of different factors related to investment. We're talking about grants, funding, venture capital, bootstrapping, accelerator programs, of course, support networks, you name it. So we'll dive into plenty of them. But for a little bit of context, my name is Gary Williams. I'm the creative producer of Innovation at Melbourne Connect, which is part of the University of Melbourne. There's some relevance to a couple of the speakers today, of course, which we'll get into shortly. But this event series is part of Melbourne Connect's online event series for 2020, which is designed to delve into a range of topics on innovation, a broad range, I should say, and it connects a diverse mix of thought leaders from industry, from academia, from government and more. So I always like to show some slides for a little bit of additional context. So bear with me for just 1 second while I share my screen and show you what Melbourne Connect is when it launches, of course, in 2021. So here we are for Advancing Invention to Investment. This is Melbourne Connect. It'll be located on the corner of Swanston and Grattan Street, which is the site of the old Royal Women's Hospital. It's a connected, purpose-built innovation ecosystem, and it'll locate everything from Melbourne School of Engineering to the School of Computing and Information Systems, Science Gallery Melbourne, Centre for AI and Digital Ethics, and of course, the Melbourne Accelerator program and Translating Research at Melbourne program, which we'll dive into today. We're going to have co-working, Fab Lab, Makerspace, and workshop spaces and gathering spaces for events just like these, covering a broad range of topics related to involving innovation, collaboration, community, and much more. Here's some great renders of the space, and as I mentioned, we'll be opening in 2021 with this exciting precinct, which is a development partnership between University of Melbourne and Lendlease. So before we get started, I'm going to do you all the service of introducing each of our speakers. So I saved them the hassle of reading out their own bio, but we'll cover off a number of factors relating to their careers and their current organisations and like upcoming activations and engagement activities as we go. So joining us today, we have Laxmi Pun, who's the Accelerator Manager for Melbourne Accelerator program. Thanks for joining us, Laxmi. She works closely with startups, mentor and investor communities to drive startup success. She's passionate about supporting student entrepreneurship, and she runs a not-for-profit to support international students in Australia. We also have Leonore Ryan. She's the entrepreneur in residence for Translating Research at Melbourne. She's got over 15 years of experience in taking research-based technologies to market. And organisations she's worked for include CSIRO, Starfish Ventures and Monash University. In 2016, she co-founded CardiHub, a digital health startup based on research from CSIRO, and secured a 1.35 million capital raise with a consortium of investors. So it's great to have you with us, Leonore. And also we have Nathan Sow. He's the manager of impact investing at Social Ventures Australia. He works in the upscaler where he helps social enterprises step change their impact through business transformation support. And they partner with social enterprises to help them win and deliver significant social procurement contracts. So the goal being to help social enterprises grow and create more employment opportunities for job seekers experiencing structural disadvantage. Very cool. He's also worked at KPMG in the United States and Australia across the deal advisory and business innovations teams. So look, great to have you all with us. I'm going to also throw to Zara Zainal, who's joining us today. I should turn on my computer. Zara's joining us. She's producing a graphic recording for today, which you can hone in on if you're selecting her view option. Basically, the graphic recordings are a fantastic storytelling mechanism, and we love having Zara involved. So thank you once again. Some really minor housekeeping. We'll be going until 1:30 p.m. We're recording this event and we'll have it published on YouTube after we conclude the event. And with that, I'm sort of out of breath. I've talked ad nauseum about all of you sellers, but how are you all going and what's keeping you occupied at the moment? I'll start in alphabetical order. So let's go with you, Laxmi.
Sure, thanks. Lovely to be here and thank you for this opportunity. So what's keeping me going is the two programs that we have currently running at the Melbourne Accelerator program. So for those of you who don't know about the Accelerator program, so we have the Core Accelerator, which is a 5-month program, and then we've got another part-time program called Velocity program, which takes about 20 startups. So we've got 30 startups that are going through acceleration phase right now. So that's keeping me busy, and having the programs online is even more busier. So yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
The Velocity program was recently in the media, so you attracted some funding as well to help run that program, I understand. How many groups are involved with the Velocity program in itself? So how many sort of founders or groups are working as part of that?
Sure. So the Velocity program was launched in 2016 as a way for us to be able to support additional founders that could make to the Accelerator program. For one was like the full-time requirement. So this is mostly for part-time founders or part-time people that are working full-time. And it was always for us to look at ways and how we'd be able to reach more founders. And luckily, we had this grant round where Launchvic provided us with $222,000, which we will then be able to support additional 100 startups in the next 2 years, or next 100 founders in the next 2 years, and also have an online version of the program, which we are quite excited about.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll do sort of the loops around and we'll come back and forth, but I definitely want to hone in on some positive aspects, some opportunities in the space. We are obviously online predominantly, but there are multiple opportunities within the space, and we'll certainly touch upon some of your, I guess, advocacy for an entrepreneurial or innovation mindset as part of the people that you encounter. So I'll come back to you shortly, Laxmi. Leonore, how are you going and what's keeping you occupied upcoming, both personally and as part of translating research at Melbourne?
Yeah, so going really well. Busy with the, I guess, the latter end of the Tram Air program. So Tram Air is a year-long program for research-based startups. So we're heading towards our demo day in October. So at the moment, busy preparing teams for that and for what might happen after the program finishes. So busy times in Tram at the moment.
What is, for those unaware of, I guess, the crucial role of an entrepreneur in residence? What's your, I guess, what would be a primary interaction that you would have? Is it around the art of the pitch, or are we sort of refining, I guess, product strategies? What would be your sort of default or go-to, you feel, as a large percentage day to day in working with these teams or individuals?
Yeah, so it's really around using my lived experience of having a startup out of a research organisation and taking that from being research outcomes, as you mentioned in the intro, through to actually raising capital. So incorporating a business, raising capital, and then helping teams who are on that journey themselves. So when they enter AIR, they may not have incorporated, they may have just incorporated, and helping them travel that journey to, finding the next source of capital, finding their first customers. And really we do provide content, which I curate and facilitate, but also really it's around the coaching of those teams. So we spend a lot of our time coaching those teams individually as well to help them actually make the most of that information and go along that journey.
And I'd imagine a healthy amount of emotional support contained within there as well. We'll come back a little bit to some of your background as well, and I'm particularly interested to dive into opportunities for commercialization of research, particularly within the deep technology realm. But before we sort of come back around on that circle, as I promised Laxmi, Nathan, how are you going? And I'd love to hear what's going on in your world, particularly in terms of not-for-profit sector and impact investment.
Oh, thanks, and it's great to be here and to meet Leonore and see you again, Laxmi. Congrats on getting the Velocity grant. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
So my day-to-day is working with social enterprises and Indigenous businesses with capacity building, helping them take the next step in their growth. We're funded by Gandale Philanthropy, and also we work with Impact Investment Ready grants to work with social purpose organizations. Also, I'm a part of the impact investing team at SBA. We make debt and equity investments into social purpose organizations and work with social impact bonds. So the common theme between my group, which is the Upscaler, and our investing teams is we work with social purpose organizations that are with traction. So the benchmark we have is about $1 million revenue, and they help people who are experiencing disadvantage in Australia.
Yeah, fantastic. And what would be, I guess, what's a common way for you to, I guess, attract interest for your sort of investment streams or support? So do you have a healthy reliance on, say, digital marketing to attract, I guess, new opportunities into that realm, or is it largely sort of outreach from your end?
The secret about investors is everyone's trying to see as many opportunities as we can. Fortunately, SBA, we have about 100 employees, so we have a real strong network in the social sector. We also try to send out hopefully helpful content online. But yeah, we're always looking for great organizations to work with.
How have you found the transition to a large amount of, I'm making an assumption here, but a large amount of face-to-face interactions in the past, and then 2020 has quickly turned that on its head, and now obviously we're doing these video interactions, but you would continue supporting. So how have you found that sort of, let's call it sharp transition into this new way of building relationships to qualify for investment?
It's been not without its challenges. So we still can meet with people like everyone else, but it's those walks to the elevators where you really develop relationships and you get a feel for if there's a good fit. So yeah, really missing that.
I can imagine. Yeah, well, surely it'll return sooner than later, but we lie in hope. Look, I would love to start before we dive into some nitty gritty about the industry and the realities of investment, etc. I'd love to hear a little personal sort of recount of a little bit of your career journey and how you've ended up in this space. Laxmi, I'll start with you, being that it feels on the online panel discussions per se that you sort of do around turn by turn. But Laxmi, why don't you tell us a tiny bit about your background and how you've ended up essentially running an accelerator program?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. So I actually graduated as an accountant. So I am a CPA, worked as an accountant for 5 years. Not really happy with what I was doing because there was always this futuristic view that I had about things, and, innovation and things like that always excited me more than books and record keeping. So I was lucky that I realized that before going deeper into that. So I did my master's in business administration from Macquarie Graduate School of Management, focusing on entrepreneurship. And it was also about the time where there were a lot of exciting things happening in the Silicon Valley. So thanks to Apple, I was able to listen to podcasts and keep myself, aware about what was happening in there. So that kind of also excited me to work in the venture capital industry. So I had a really good opportunity to go to the US, find out about what was happening there. I wasn't able to break in the VC industry in there, but when I came back to India, I spent some time in impact investing space, working for an early stage investor called Will Grow India. So I worked with them for some time. Then there was a really good opportunity at Startup Bootcamp to, to support their startups. Before that, I also tried to sort of run my own business with my husband, trying to start a gaming studio, which it didn't go well as we expected, but that was a great learning experience. So yeah, coming back to Startup Bootcamp, working with the founders in really helping them to be investment ready, given that I had background in finance and investment. And also my role at Vilgro was more around portfolio analysis and more on the investment side. But what I really enjoyed was being in front of the founders and really helping them. At Startup Bootcamp, I also helped launch one of the program called the Talent Institute, which was about helping young professionals or graduates to learn startup skills and growth hacking skills. And that's why I'm so attached to this, entrepreneurial talent in youngsters. And then when the opportunity came for MAP, I felt like this was a really good moment for me to really bring all that I had learned, but also be really able to work with the founders and inspire the next generation of founders that are going to be coming out of our university. So that's how I landed up here.
I'm not going to at all during this ask if you've got any favourites who have been involved throughout the Accelerator program, because then obviously you have to play favourites and start name dropping. But I'd love to know some sort of common things or let's call it sort of pain points that founders have had throughout the process that I guess the Melbourne Accelerator team help provide assistance or support for, and help, I guess, shape their value proposition and make them even more market ready. So what have you sort of recognised that as perhaps a consistent theme or recognising founders as they've entered the program?
So I think with the Accelerator program, we kind of support them in go-to-market strategies and business strategies and less on the technical side of things. Like usually the founders, they know the problem really well and they might have come up with solutions. And what we really help them during the program is to really crystallize those solutions and also find a repeatable, scalable model, as we say in startup land. So we work with them on that. So that's also a moment where there's a lot of questioning about their assumptions going out there, especially for velocity startups, because they are so early in their career or in their journey, entrepreneurial journey. It's really about telling them to go out and get customer validation and really find that one or two customers that will show that you've got something to work on. Whereas for the Accelerator, it's more so about really accelerating businesses. So it's really like, but making sure that they are not just like putting themselves in a room and working on a product, but again going out and building a repeatable, scalable model and trying to find that. So we've got like Leonore, we've got 10 other entrepreneurs in residence that work directly with our startups, and led by our chief entrepreneur in residence, Jeremy Crable, who's got years of experience running startups. And these are the people that actually coach our startups and really help them come out of their shell and be the entrepreneurs that they aspire to be.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to ask you about shortly when I come back around. I'll ask you about some mindset questions, as I mentioned before. But Leonore, let's dive into a bit of your background. I mentioned some of it in the bio, but obviously I don't do you a great service in doing so. So tell us a little bit about your background. I'd love to hear a little bit about your progression into launching Cardi Hub, and then also your involvement with, say, CSIRO technology. And, the many facets of what makes up your day-to-day, where you've led to now.
Sure. So I actually started out studying science and engineering at university. I went into a PhD in engineering and worked in research for a couple of years, but then realised that actually wasn't where I wanted to spend my time. I was actually more interested probably in the business of science than being at the bench.
Yeah.
And so I actually then moved into an MBA instead, so that I could bring that business experience to pair with my science and engineering experience. And from there, went on to actually join originally Monash University in their business development team in the Faculty of IT. I was there for 5 years. Taking a number of different IT So both hardware and software technologies to market, a lot of licensing, some spin-outs. At that time, I also spent a year doing an internship with Starfish Ventures on their pre-seed fund.
Yep.
So I really learned about what venture capital looks for with regards to early stage investments, what they're looking for, how the process works, what sorts of things are important, how they make decisions. After that, I actually went to CSIRO and was part of the commercialisation team there for 10 years. And so worked across manufacturing, energy, environment, and so looking at creating spin-outs based on technologies out of CSIRO. And then they had a change of CEO in the last few years I was there, and Larry Marshall came on board and was really interested in bringing entrepreneurship to CSIRO, and I was lucky enough to be involved in setting up what became the ON program. And so I actually travelled to the US to do some, reconnaissance research on other programs in the US and how we could bring those learnings back to Australia and actually bring those into what became the ON program.
Yeah.
I was coaching a team in what was Lean Launchpad, CSIRO ran for a couple of years. And they actually said, we're really not sure whether we want to do this new accelerator that CSIRO is setting up. And I said, look, this is exactly what you need to be doing. This is the next step for you guys. You're perfectly positioned to go into that. And so they applied and they said, will you help us? And I said, of course, I'm thinking I would coach the team from my commercialisation role. But actually they put me down on the application as being part of the team. And so I ended up joining the team, which ultimately became CardiHab.
Right.
So I went through the accelerator in its first phase. And then we were actually the first business to incorporate out of that first CSO or on Accelerator program. And so we incorporated the following year, we incorporated CardiHab. And then for the next couple of years, we were doing all the things that Laxmi was talking about, trying to make those first sales, raising capital. So I took the business through to raising the first round of capital, as you mentioned in the intro. And then I stepped away from the business and they brought in a new CEO to take it to the next level. And there's now actually another CEO who's, taking it to really, in its strides at the moment with all that's happening in the world. Being a telehealth offering, the business is going great guns at the moment. And so from there, I then decided to start my own business instead, bringing all of those skills together. And that's where I work for TRAM as their entrepreneur residents, as I said earlier, bringing my lived experience to the teams in TRAM.
That's amazing. I didn't know some of those facets of your journey. So that's incredible to hear. I will soon hone in on, I guess there's some recognition in that from a research perspective, sometimes we can dive down the rabbit hole a bit too much and not, which is essentially the problems that you're solving. You can go down a heavy research path and need more, I guess, business nous, commercialization, know-how, etc. On the flip side, you can be heavily embedded in startup land and not sort of take the time to do the research and test and, ask customers what they need and so on. But I'd love to angle into a specific investment question. So I mentioned before that, as part of CardiHab, you had a raise, which was part of a consortium. Did you want to talk about, what that consortium contained? Because as I understand it, it wasn't a straight venture capital raise from one investor. There was sort of a number of people involved in that. Is that correct?
Yes. So we had a strategic investor who, was really key to us actually bringing together that consortium. The fact that, we had that validation from a strategic investor, I think was was crucial to bringing on some of those other parties. We had an early stage in a VC organisation, and then another, I guess, early stage funder that actually works through Accelerator programs. They don't invest directly just as a VC, but actually as part of you joining an Accelerator program.
Fascinating. All right, I'm gonna come back to some investment focused questions because obviously that's a part of what we're talking about today. But no, thank you. That's fascinating. I want to find out more for sure. Nathan, how's it going? I think I'd love to know a little bit. I mentioned that you were working for KPMG overseas, but obviously that's not the entire part of your career journey. Do you want to tell us a little bit about? I would actually love to know how you've progressed directly into the impact investment space, but maybe tell us the contributing factors as to why that's so.
Yeah, sure. And it's great to hear both y'all's backgrounds. My story is similar to a lot of the people in the impact investing space. I was doing finance, financial due diligence for private equity transactions, and got into business innovation, and got to a point where I started searching for meaning, and that journey brought me over here to Australia, working with social enterprises on the side. It took me over to Zambia, working with a tech company out there. And while I was in Zambia, I found out about Social Ventures Australia and impact investing, and was lucky enough to be able to join the team. We raised, so my first role at SVA was helping raise our $15 million Diversified Impact Fund, which is our growth stage fund. That's partially supported by philanthropy. And I was involved in our EdTech and disability investments, such as our $1 million investment in Mass Pathway, which is changing how students learn. And then from there, I joined our capacity building program, Upscaler, to try to help social procurement meet its potential with social enterprises and indigenous businesses. So in this role, I do a lot of impact investment readiness work, helping secure grants, and then business strategy and transformational support.
Amazing. So when was it that you were physically located in Australia then as part of that journey?
I've been in Australia for 6 years now, so happy to say I'm a permanent resident, and my application for citizenship is in. Cool.
Very cool. Because I'm certainly not cutting this short. It gives good credence to lead into the next sort of, I guess, questions around an innovation mindset, perhaps some commercial focuses in certain ways. Obviously, create products or services, etc., and take them to market and seek to grow it, etc. But I'd love to know your thoughts on, I guess, the people that you encounter. Obviously, it's not in person at this point in time, and we're not getting those sort of like bump into the elevator. But what are you sort of looking for when you're meeting with founders, and also what are some, I guess, let's call it common characteristics that you recognize in the people that you're interacting with, and where you can essentially predict some levels of, I want to say success, but I think perseverance might be a better categorization. So what do you sort of recognize in a consistent founder or enabler approach?
Look, it's such a mixed bag of people.
Yeah.
But the one commonality is the person knows what they're talking about. Yeah. And that's something that it's just a sense, but most people can sniff out. I talked to a lot of people who are making the pitch, and they're basically have an idea or a dream or ambition, and they really believe in it, and that's absolutely vital. But what you need to support that dream, that vision, that ambition is to know the risks, be prepared for the questions people are going to ask. So have the data to support what you're saying, or be really clear about what data you do and don't have. So when I see people who are really well thought out, know the answers to all my questions, and can say it succinctly, that's when I think this person has a good chance.
And there's obviously not one true one size fits all for any particular founder, particularly from an investment perspective. Some investors are simply looking for different characteristics and would have their own, I guess, categorizations of perceived success. But I might even just dive into what you've just mentioned. Off the top of your head, what makes a good pitch deck? Because you would receive quite a few. So if we were talking about length of pitch deck or obviously supporting data, what do you look for as a good indicator, as a great starting point to build that relationship?
Well, to start with is what you just touched on, which is investors are looking for different things. So the first step is you should be able to tell me why we are the ideal investor for you. It takes some extra research, but it really helps you stand out. And then in a pitch deck, you need to know everything that an investor is going to look for in your pitch deck, which is hard to do before meeting with them. That's why I always recommend doing a staggered approach to meeting investors, so each time you can improve your pitch deck. But generally, I want to see metrics. The story's great. But I want to see realistic metrics. I want to see your market size, and not what your dream market size is, but what is the realistic total revenue your product is going to get if it had all the customers in that field. Not what is the market size if your product or service expands a couple iterations down the road. Because I'm gonna do that research. So if it's not, what I find isn't aligned with what you're telling me, then that's a red flag in terms of what else I can believe. And another stuff is just your revenue growth, your customer acquisition numbers, and your unit economics.
How often, not necessarily wrong, but how often would it not quite, are we talking sort of 95% of what you would, what will come across your theoretical desk would not quite hit what you're looking for?
Yeah, look, let's see, the numbers are about 1 in 300.
Wow.
So when raising capital, you got to be prepared to have 100 phone calls, 100 emails. Okay. It's a long process that most founders, it takes 6 months to do. Important
to paint a true picture of what that process is, not just lightning in a bottle, bump into someone and you get funded. So look, thank you for painting that picture. I'm going to come back to that staggered approach soon as well, because that's almost a great point also, or takeaway for people to consider when potentially going into that sort of investment steps or process. Laxmi, I'll come to you now, and I truly understand. I know how strange it is. It's sort of like you sweep around the room. Normally, if we were in a room physically, it would be handing the mics back and forth and jumping in and out with thoughts. But online changes it and makes it a bit more formal in the taking turns part. But Laxmi, you've mentioned about that you're, I guess, passionate about that innovation or entrepreneurial mindset approach, and you do work with young people as well. So what have you recognized as some great characteristics or consistent factors across the people that you meet, whether related to Melbourne Accelerator program or in your other pursuits? What's something that you really value personally?
Yeah. I would say the number one thing would be growth mindset. So really thinking about that any problem or anything or any challenges could actually be solved with, the right learning skills and skill development that is required. So I think that's one important thing that most of the people that we see have or need to have. The other thing is also around the motivation factor as well, right? So these days, because of we're living in a world where we want everything like really quick and fast. And so that comes to like a lot of things that especially students or founders that they are looking, like if they don't find a solution, they quickly jump and move on. Like really having that persistent to solve that problem is quite important. So we do want to see in our founders that they really understand the problem, that they really are motivated to solve that problem rather than, coming up with solutions. The other thing is, just as Nathan mentioned, having the right skill set or expertise, whether that is through lived experience or whether that is through research like Leonore. So it's really having right skill set, growth mindset, and motivation is something that we look for in founders, but also in the students that I've seen. Again, if they are going to go in the work environment, especially after the COVID, it's like really looking at how can they be flexible with their careers, how can they have that growth mindset, how can they be motivated to look further than what's just available. And in these times where everything is becoming very, very much globalized, I think it's quite important for them to have these set of skill set or mindset in them.
Yeah, no, fair. I think I'd love to take lead from that point as well. So a lot of emphasis is placed on, I guess, the personality or the characteristics of a founder singular. I'd love to know what you sort of have recognised in great teams, because there's a lot of rhetoric about the characteristics of a great founder singular, but then on the other hand, investors will say that they're looking as part of that investment process for a great foundational team. So, and that's potentially confusing for certain people, whether they should just be going it alone or whether they do need, a technical co-founder along for the ride, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you recognise in great teams as particularly as they've, say come into the Melbourne Accelerator program, for instance, over the years?
Definitely. So at MAP, actually, we have 50% of our founders tend to be solo founders, and that's okay. I think, they do find the support from the Accelerator program, like other founders, really helpful, and hence they choose to come as a solo founder. But having said so, having a team with complementary skill set always helps. And in fact, it's a very long, it can be a very long, gruesome journey that Nathan and Leonore will know more about it. So it's really important to have someone that you can share your ideas, or you can sort of, flesh out the problem and work towards. So really bringing the team together that have complementary skill set and the execution ability, because it's not just about ideas, it's really executing the ideas, and hence having that team really helps in that process. Yeah,
for sure. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and I love your continual advocacy for growth mindset. It's truly important. Leonore, let's go to you. I'm going to ask a few direct questions in regards to basically what you encounter all the time. So where we have these groups or researchers that obviously hold that research very, very dear to their hearts. They pour sort of a lot of themselves into figuring out these hugely complex answers to hypotheses, etc. But then they're faced with opportunities of commercializing, and some can do it and some can't, obviously. What have you sort of seen over the years, and where do you think some great opportunities sit? I'll start with on the side of researchers in developing that commercialization mindset.
Yeah, so we really look to work with researchers who actually want to create an impact from their research, and for the majority of researchers, that's actually why they're in it, is to make a difference, and so we then provide them with skills, training, access to expertise, to actually develop that further, to be able to see how they can actually make an impact. So rather than it just being, I've created this thing and magically it will somehow, turn into something that's on the shelves or, available to consume. They're actually starting to think about that. So helping them develop those entrepreneurial skills and mindset as to how that actually might happen and how they can actually facilitate that journey. And so that's a really key part of doing that, and then looking for teams that are coachable to be able to actually take that. So TRAM takes in research teams, and then we look to actually pair them up to introduce them to other resources to flesh out that team, to make it a more holistic, that differentiation of thought and skill sets, to be able to actually really deliver impact.
As a starting point, what would be one of the types of resources to surround a research team with? Are we talking about, say, people with operations backgrounds, or do we regularly see, I guess, a marketing group? It's a marketing specialist involved in that process. What have you sort of recognised on a more overwhelming basis over your time?
Yeah, so more general business skills, I would say. So a lot of those specialist skills can come in later, like marketing, but just really around the mindset of making a sale. So one of the key things I learned at business school, having been trained as a scientist, I wanted to keep researching till I found the answer, till I kind of got to the end. And doing an MBA, it's like making a decision with imperfect information, making the best decision at the time with what's actually available to you. And so bringing that kind of thinking to groups, to research groups, to be able to marry those two things together, that yes, we've actually got this great idea, and at the moment there's an opportunity here. Ultimately, we might really want to do this other thing, but let's go to here, and then we can build it out further, rather than waiting till we've perfected it and then trying to go to market at the end. So bringing that, and so we have quite good relationships with Melbourne Business School, with the Wade Institute, to actually be able to introduce the researchers to other groups, to be able to look for common interest in solving some of those problems and bringing those other skill sets together.
That's fantastic. I'm not I like to keep it fresh when we sort of end the discussion by, giving people something to look towards. So I'll definitely come back to how people can, register interest, find out more, engage, and so on, particularly if they come from that research background or were business generalists or professionals who might like to be involved.
Yeah.
Let's before I do move on, I would love to mention to the attendees today. So thank you very much for joining us. You are most welcome to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, because I don't want this to be just simply a forum for us to talk around ourselves. We'd love to answer questions that you have, and we'll definitely pay it some time if you'd like to put them in there. So there's a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, as well as the chat function. Feel very free to put it in there. But look, let's move on. I want to, Laxmi, Leonore, you're involved with universities. Obviously, we have these Accelerator growth support programs, both entailing emerging startups that may or may not be affiliated with the university as alumni. And then Leonore, obviously, research groups. Nathan, I'll start with you, but what I'm basically asking is around the opportunities for universities in developing, I guess, let's call it entrepreneurial pursuits, but fundamentally new ventures, new, world-changing things. What role can universities play over and above the obvious outcomes, which would be incredible research? What are some really key things for universities to latch onto as a prediction over the next few years? And COVID-19 may have an influencing say in that.
Well, I don't know if this is my area of expertise, so I'll just provide 2 cents and hand it over to Leonore.
Yeah. No, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
So from my point of view, the best accelerators or organizations that do innovation are the ones that really effectively immerse the teams in whatever their sector is. So they have direct access to the customers or their suppliers, their experts. An example of this was the Melbourne Health Accelerator, which was housed in the Royal Melbourne Hospital. These guys made a lot of progress because they could go down the hallway and talk to a potential customer. Yep. So the strength that the universities have is research. So then you have to connect that research to the beneficiaries of that research, and somehow bring together these ideas and then the users, I think would be quite powerful. And I'm sure Melbourne University is doing it in powerful ways that I'm not aware of.
They're doing lots of stuff for sure, but it's there are always opportunities to capitalize on for without a doubt. We've had a question from Dave, but and I'll come to you in 1 second, Dave. Leonore, Laxmi, I'd love to know about your thoughts on further opportunities, so further things that could be enabled over the coming while, and obviously, more commercial mindset for researchers. The vice versa, but also I guess connections between universities and say venture capitalists. What are some opportunities in that regard?
Yeah, I think you're right, Nathan. Like, I think the universities can play a really crucial role, especially like the industry engagement, whether that be it a commercial industry engagement, like, partnership with Telstra or other things, but also like industry engagement with the venture capital itself. So, it's kind of playing this pivotal role where you have the innovation happening at the universities, but you've got customers and clients and, industry that are wanting this kind of, technology waiting in here. So the university can become like a place where you have this young talent taking the problem, solving the problem, solving the problem and making it a commercial way for them to then partner with this industry. So I think it really plays a key role in bringing this ecosystem partner together. Otherwise, research just becomes a research if you don't have anyone to actually take it and fund it and make it commercial, right? So you want to make sure that it's all talking to one another, and I think the universities play that role.
Mm. Leonore, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so to build on that, I guess, we're really looking at deep tech, and deep tech's expensive, and the development takes a long time. There's been a recent report out on deep tech that reckons that Australian deep tech giants are 30-year overnight successes. And in some cases that's true. There's certainly examples of it being over a decade to really be an overnight success, if you like. And so I think there is a need for universities to have a role in actually nurturing those groups, getting them to speak the language, to be able to understand the concepts, and then actually move teams on to other things like Nathan was saying about those specialised groups. So I actually was in the first intake of MHX. There's definitely value in being in a specialised accelerator program, and so that we see as a next step for some of the teams that actually come out of the AIR program is to go into something like MHX and start to look at that quite specific environment and have those teams around them. But I think the role of the university is to get them to there, to get them to prepared to be able to succeed. And that's where we can add a lot of value at the moment, because for research-based teams, for deep tech, it's often a lot of money and a number of years to get to market. It's not something where you had the idea in the shower one morning and 6 months later it's on the App Store.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. No, that's fantastic. And yes, it's a consistent opportunity. And look, fundamentally, that's exactly what you're doing at the moment. You're driving these initiatives to enhance those prospects of seeing these deep tech opportunities, come to light and be utilized by more people. World-changing impact, essentially. What where I'll end it today, and I'll continue to invite people to pose questions. So where I'll end it at the end is obviously, Leonore, we've got some upcoming activations that Tram are involved in that I'll sort of do a call out to. Laxmi will sort of also hone in on growth mindset, and Nathan, as I promised, will touch upon again, I guess, a tangible way that people can investigate, such as that staggered approach. But before we dive into that, I'd love to ask an open question, which Dave has put out, who's joined us today. He said, what is the biggest challenge faced when bringing R&D invention to market for a founding researcher? Ones that you recognise in that R&D perspective. Leonore, you're still on my screen, so maybe we'll go back in reverse and start with you.
Sure. The biggest challenge, there are a number of them. I guess the valley of death is probably one of the biggest. As I said, it does take a number of years and a fair bit of money to actually be able to take a lot of these technologies to market. And so surviving that valley of death, that research grants will only get you so far. But then being able to continue to fund the development and actually get into the market is one of the hardest things to do for research.
And is working on these ventures for the entire life of the project within Australia crucial, or are there other opportunities to, I guess, rapidly grow these the potential of these projects?
It depends on the technology, but by definition, there's significant innovations that are often world-changing things, and so regardless of where you are in the world, it is a complex and time-consuming thing to actually take to market. There are parts of the world that understand this better, and so therefore there's greater access to funding than other places. So it can make a difference, but it really depends on the specific technology as to whether a change of geography is needed or not.
Of course. Nathan, Laxmi, any remarks to make on sort of, I guess, challenges for bringing R&D inventions to market that you've recognised of late?
I think Leonore covered it really well. The only thing I'd add from an investor point of view, if there's any approval process, investors then say that this investment has a binary outcome. Either this can be successful or they're going to lose all your money. And there's only certain investors who will invest in binary outcomes. So it's good to know who they are. They're mainly the specifically health investors.
What's a tangible way of, I guess, unearthing who those types of investors would be?
Well, you can start with branding capital, and then ask them.
Fair enough. Go down the rabbit hole, essentially. Laxmi, I'd love to know some of your involvement, obviously, in teams with, perhaps some hefty R&D sitting behind it. I know that Neura, when they first came into the Melbourne Accelerator program, were almost part of a research project with the hospital, looking at that sort of inner ear sound project. But what other examples have you sort of encountered over time, and what challenges have you recognised for R&D market readiness?
Yes, I think the landscape for Accelerator has changed a lot in the last couple of years, and especially when Neura were going at that time. I think we were able to support them at that stage, but right now what has really happened is we're trying to also find what's the best spot for us to be able to support the startups. So mostly startups that have longer time to market, we usually have them either in our velocity program, so that way they can still work on their R&D project for full time or on full time, and then do and just get the support from how to go to the market and things like that. But in the main core Accelerator program, we do tend to take startups that have already passed through that R&D phase. So we are looking at helping them with commercializing in the sense that, if they are investment ready, if they've got their IP sorted out, if all of these things that the market, for them to go to the market that they need, like approvals and things like that, that needs to be sorted out before they come to the Accelerator program. Hence, we do get some startups like especially from biodesign, course that happens at the university. Like we had two startups that went through our program, Ventura Medicals and Navi. Both went through Velocity program and not necessarily the Accelerator program, because 5 months was just not enough for them to for us to be able to contribute to them. But having said so, they're still in our MAP network through our Velocity program, and we still are able to support them as our alumni. But I would say that the sweet spot for the Melbourne Accelerator program is really helping the teams when they are ready to go out to the market, if they are at that phase.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, thank you very much. Look, as we round it off, and I say the same thing every single event. I promise everyone that 1:30 is going to roll around quickly, and sure enough, it does, and we get right towards the end. Zara's producing the graphic recording, which I'll spotlight in a second. I'd love to end on a combination of some trends that you've each recognised and where you sort of see some great opportunities in the very near future, without leaving that too vague. That might be relating to particular industries, that might be related to particular types of projects that are needed at this time. But also I'll leave it open then for you to make a call out in terms of what to look for in terms of your specific endeavours. Leonore, I've got some links for your upcoming events as well, so I'll make sure to mention those. But look, why don't we, Laxmi, you're still on my screen, so let's start with you. We'll go to Nathan and then Leonore. So what are you seeing in regards to trends and opportunities at this point in time?
Trends and opportunities. I think there's a lot happening in this space, especially because we are university. Like, I tend to be more focused on edtech startups as well. So there's a lot happening in edtech space, given that we're all trying to do things virtually, but also in other areas like AI and data science and things like that. What I also wanted to just stress out before moving was that from our last point around the taking startups at R&D phase. So what we're saying is that we do take startups, like especially that are inventive and are innovative. We take startups of that, but it's just the stage. It depends on what stage they are in. So once they let's say, for example, go through TRAM program and they're at a stage where they are ready to go to market, then they can come to the MAP program. So once they go to the Velocity program, doesn't mean like they can't come to the MAP program. It's just because of the stage. So that's something that I wanted to clear out, just in case.
That's clear. That's clear. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. No, that makes sense. Look, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it and can't wait to see what else MAP has on the radar upcoming. Nathan, love to know what you sort of see as some opportunities in the market at the moment. That's a broad question, I understand, but particularly in the impact investment space, I'd love to know what you're passionate about upcoming.
Yeah, sure. The big trends for us is ethical consumerism and social procurement. Social procurement is where you have an advantage winning contracts with corporates and government if you're a social enterprise or indigenous business. So that's a rising tide there. And I can't not mention COVID and all the changes there are there. And instead of being esoteric, might leave participants with something concrete. There's a lot of grants available right now for COVID-related projects. Two in particular, I'll share. Movember, they have a social connection challenge. It's grants for $140,000 to $200,000. The deadline is 15th of October. And then FYA, they have $5,000 to $20,000 grants. Deadline is 7 October. It's the Youth Action Project Grant Scheme. It's for projects that help young people with connection during COVID. So if that's relevant to you, I encourage everyone to check that out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So the Movember Social Connection Challenge and the FYA Youth Action Project. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic. And thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Leonore, lastly to you, as you speak, I'll put some links to the upcoming TRAN engagement events, the demo day and the showcase. But I'd love to know opportunities and trends that you recognise in the market as we round off the discussion.
Yeah, so further to Nathan's comments, there's also various government grant programs with regards to COVID-19 funding. So that's certainly, and for all sorts of things that can help with the pandemic. So not just thinking about vaccines, but thinking about treatment, thinking about how we do business differently. I think more broadly in healthcare, we've really seen a revolution in how healthcare is delivered. With the great increase in telehealth, and I think that has a lot of opportunities as well going forward. So I think that there is a lot of opportunity in a number of different places. Earlier in the year, obviously we were talking a lot about climate with all of the bushfires. That's kind of been overshadowed in recent times by COVID, but it hasn't gone away. And I know I'm starting to see things around that again, around climate change and sustainability. So I certainly see that as an area that's going to come through again as another big area for the next little while.
Look, thank you for that, and that is important to keep cognizant of. So I'm sure we'll see many more solutions hopefully arising over the coming time as that rises to prominence in the social commentary once again. Look, thank you all so much for joining us. We've just exceeded time. For everyone who has been following along, Zara continually does these fantastic graphic recordings. So we really appreciate it, Zara. Once again, it's great, and our speakers get a great avatar at the end of it. Look, I want to thank you all so very much for being part of today. This has been Advancing Invention to Investment. Leonore, Nathan, Laxmi, thank you so much for being a part of it. And you can check out future Melbourne Connect events on the Facebook page, as well as online on our melbconnect.com.au/events website page. Thank you all so much.